Hi, I'm Jeremy Allison with Google's Open Source Programs Office, and we're very lucky to be here today with Junio Hamano. Say hi.
Hi, my name is Jun Hamano.
So Jun, and he prefers Jun, by the way. So Jun is one of the people behind the Git source code control system. So Git is an extremely important free software project. It's actually the source code control system that's used by the Linux kernel, and in fact it's what really makes the distributed development model of Linux and a whole host of other free software projects possible. Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really one of the most important free software projects that we have. Jun is a developer here at Google. So let's ask a little bit about your background. You're originally from Japan, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you were working on proprietary software and then moved over to Los Angeles.
Yeah. I actually had only 1 year, or maybe less than 1 year of work experience after finishing school over there.
Ah.
And then my employer had a little venture in Los Angeles, and they sent me there.
Right. And that's where you ran into the maintainer of, what was it, GNU's source code control system, RCS, correct?
Yes. Paul Eggert, who is now professor at UCLA. He was at the company, and I don't know what if he's actively maintaining them anymore, but he's been maintaining patch, RCS, and diff, all sorts of stuff, green software. So
Paul's great. He's an amazing guy. He actually submitted a whole host of patches to Samba. It's funny because I've heard his name so many times, yet I've never actually met him. So he was your mentor, right?
Yes.
And was it Paul who first introduced you to the idea of open source and free software?
The business of that company was really doing custom software for clients, so it's more like systems integration work. But because of his influence, we use the open source software wherever we can instead of going to proprietary system.
Right. And you, so, I mean, you prefer that development model?
Yes. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about why?
Well, I fully subscribe to an open source mantra of, I've changed something to this open stuff, and that made my life better, and that may make somebody else's life better.
Right.
And by doing that, everybody doing that, we together make the world a better place.
Cool.
So that's probably the only right way of doing the software.
So it's like a gift economy, like doing science with software development. Yeah. So how did you first get involved in Git?
We were between projects back then. My employer's workload had ups and downs, and when I was browsing the kernel mailing list, back then and right now also, I don't work on the kernel, but I just am interested in looking at what's going on. So I saw Linus's announcement that said we are switching from BitKeeper.
Right.
But, we don't have anything to switch to, so I'm going to write one.
So you weren't involved in the BitKeeper stuff or anything to do with the source code control system before that?
No, not really. No. I was aware of, I've heard of the name BitKeeper, and when they switched to BitKeeper, when Linux kernel switched to BitKeeper, I was a bit interested, but after learning that it's just a free, as in free beer license and no source code, I wasn't really, I lost interest. So
right, so proprietary software, just free, as in the cost was free to use, but it was still proprietary software.
Yeah,
right.
so I lost interest and I never touched BitKeeper.
Right,
so.
right. So you saw his announcement, and then what made you decide to want to work on that?
No. That was year 2005. So we've been at business, and also my home computer, everything runs free stuff, and I've been getting free and open source software's benefit personally and also at business, at work quite a bit, and I wanted to have something that I can contribute back. What Linus announced was really just a tiny bit of code, like 1,200 lines of code.
Oh wow! It was so small to start with.
Yeah. So it was really cleanly written code that can be read in one sitting.
Right.
And compared to hundreds of lines of code in the kernel, it's something that total stranger like me can start reading and then start making a difference.
So be honest, do you think it would help your career? Was that also some of the motivations behind it, or?
Not really. I mean, it was really what I was doing at work didn't have anything to do with source code control. Didn't have anything to do with kernel. So it was really just a hobby. But if you spend your time on something, you find the fun.
Yeah.
You might as well do something that also benefits others. So.
Right. So, being as you were working on other things, how did you find the time to work on Git? I mean, this is something that I've heard many programmers say, well, I have a full-time job, how am I going to work on this open source stuff as well?
Originally, it was really either early in the morning before I get to work or after I come home or weekend. But I noticed that, I have this cubicle nobody can peek into at work. So I started hacking on Git during the day, gradually.
Oh, that's great. So in the best traditions of free software, you were kind of, let's just say you were creative with your use of the employer's time.
Yeah, exactly. And after a few months, by the time I took over the maintenance of Git, my employer back then arranged some sponsorship with a big Japanese company, and they jointly funded 20% of my time.
Oh, that's fantastic.
To be dedicated for Git maintenance. So I said, okay, Wednesday is a Git Wednesday.
Right.
And I won't work anything but Git on that day.
So it only took you a few months to end up basically taking the maintainership, and wow, you must be a phenomenal coder.
No, when Linus started the Git project, he upfront said he's not interested in maintaining this project forever. He wanted to go back to the kernel work as quickly as he can.
Right.
And a lot of people, after hearing that, not just me, but a lot of folks contributed to the project. And I happen to have a lot of code, a lot more code than others, and somehow ended up gaining trust. From the community.
So Git is an example of an incredibly successful free software project, because from its roots, just like Linux itself, from its roots as the source code control system for Linux, it has now spread so that it's used in so many places. And I mean, my own project Samba uses Git, and in fact, I would. Do you know what percentage of free software uses Git as its control?
No,
you don't track?
I don't keep track, and my my motivation doesn't really include world domination. So.
Unlike Linus, yeah. So this was a side project, but in terms of source code control systems, it really did take over the world.
Right.
I mean, so for people who may be interested, the older source code control systems were CVS, concurrent versioning system, I think it was, and SVN was this successor to that. I can't even remember what that stands for. And Samba, like many other free software projects, used those early source code control versions. But after Git came out, after the Linux kernel started using it, we ended up migrating to it as well. It really has become incredibly dominant. So why do you think it's so successful? What are the features of Git that make it such a revolution in source code control?
Probably the most distinguishing part is you can have a distributed operation. Not just in the sense that you can take your laptop on the plane and work disconnected, but the mental freedom that comes from that mode of operation, namely you can do experimental work, or maybe you can come up with an idea that may or may not work, and you can keep working on that, recording your progress from time to time by making commits without having to worry about embarrassing yourself in the public. Like if you did something like, if you used that kind of workflow using, say, CVS or Subversion, then essentially
everybody will see it.
Yeah, whenever you make a commit, everybody will see it. But,
that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. The thing, I mean, my use of Git actually started off very simple. And the thing I liked about it in migrating from those older systems was that if you wanted to, you could keep the same workflow model. So you could still do the sort of the public commit and push out to the central server. So people who were used to the old systems could still use it in the same way as the old systems. But the real power of it comes when you realize the freedom it gives you to experiment and do sort of radical things on your own that quite often end up never seeing the light of day. Yes, I've had quite a few branches that are like that. So the only thing I would say is one minor criticism is, why is it so hard to use? It's been described to me as being as user friendly as a bag full of kicked ferrets. You've got to put your hand in, and they're all going to bite you. So why is it so difficult to use?
Probably it comes from two reasons. One is it's designed to be flexible so that you can use it in any way you want, and we don't give you good guidance. This is the one true way of using it, because the system is young, so we don't have one.
Right.
And that's one thing. Another thing is because the system wasn't really designed, but grew organically. So somebody came up with an idea of doing one thing. Oh, this is a good idea, good feature. Let's add it to this command as this option. And the option name he chooses just gets stuck. But after a few months, somebody else notices, oh, this is a similar mode of operation with that existing command. Why are they named differently? That kind of thing happens all the time.
And the person who wrote it didn't even know about the other command, probably.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of, using Git, it's start out gently, then after a while it's like juggling chainsaws. You are going to cut your arms and legs off. And then after a while you kind of learn the safe set of commands that you can use. But the interesting thing I've discovered about Git usage, just with other members of my team, is that safe set of commands that people use, it's different for everybody. So it's really hard to teach somebody to use Git, because what seems perfectly natural and normal to you is a horrible workflow model to someone else. So
that may be true, and it comes back to the why, the earlier question of why Git got so popular.
Yeah.
I think the folks at GitHub, that is a shared code hosting company, and also they provide their own Git training to
right.
people. They had a huge contribution to Git gaining traction, because they essentially showed how the one form of the code sharing and social coding would work.
Right.
And it may not fit well, their model may or may not fit well with your project, but at least they showed one way, one workable and a way that people get enthused about.
Yeah.
So they had a really big input in getting Git popularized.
It's a very interesting project in that it may be, it may end up being potentially more useful than the Linux kernel itself. Sort of bear with me for a while here. I know sort of Linux is going everywhere, as we had Jim Zemlin talking about the other week. But Git enables distributed work. And you can use it for a whole host of different things. I have a friend who uses, he's kind of crazy, he keeps his entire photograph history in Git in various different branches.
Many people do that.
Yeah, and it's actually possible to use this thing in a distributed way. It essentially allows the open source model to scale. I think that's its real strength, because I'm sure you remember, Linus, the reason the whole thing was created in the first place was that Linus was just crumbling under the weight of patches, the amount of changes he had to cope with. And Git was, well, Bitkeeper then followed by Git were the only things that enabled him to be able to cope with the massive amount of change management. So that allows projects to scale up in complexity in a way that they couldn't before, when everybody had to make sure that every commit didn't break everyone else's code. Right. If you see what I mean. Right. Yeah. So it just strikes me as being an incredibly important change in the way we've worked. So what are you working on right now? What are the exciting new things that you're doing in Git?
This is not really exactly what's going to happen in next release, but in the longer term thing, we are trying to make Git to scale much larger project, like eventually like a Google code base, which is millions of lines of code, or how many millions, I don't know.
Yeah.
And more recent happenings is it's likely that a release, maybe 2 releases from now, Git will finally start getting internationalized, so you can say, oh, okay, Git messages in Japanese. Or,
right.
So.
That is something that really... All right, I'm going to put a soapbox here. You need to do that sooner rather than later. It's one of the things that, at least with Samba, we had to tackle early on, and in fact it was the Japanese Samba users group who really helped us with that. But until the software is able to work in an international environment, then it's... having to make people learn English in order to program, I think is a barrier, especially... especially in Asia and many other parts of the world. So as soon as you can get localized versions, I think you will end up with world domination. it's going to be no good to dominate the world if you make everybody speak English.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So how come you ended up here at Google? What made you move here?
The primary reason was I was looking for somebody, some employer other than my old employer who can give me more Git time. Because,
okay.
The workload on Git was getting a bit too large for just the Git Wednesday. So I asked around and ended up here.
So I mean, because Google use it for the Android code base, right?
Yes, yeah. Google internally uses something different, and
yes. The source code control system that shall not be named. Yes.
no,
But it would be much better if we could move to Git. And there are many areas in the company that already use it.
Right.
Correct.
yeah, and the outside world-facing projects like Android and Chrome.
Yeah.
And the open source part is managed in Git, and
Yeah.
so the internal project needs to interface with it at least. So
Yeah.
Git is becoming more important inside Google as well.
Well, the great thing about it is there's so many people outside who know how to use it that if you want to successfully launch an open source project, then using Git as your source code control system automatically widens the pool of contributors who can download, who know how to download and make changes and send you patches.
Yeah.
And in fact, very complex patch sets. That's the thing that impressed me. So what my favourite Git command is sort of the Git format patch command, which will take a whole list of changes and parcel them up so that you can easily email them out, and it's wonderful actually. It's really helped our development, at least in Samba.
That was my last contribution to the project before I took over.
Oh, thank you.
So back then I was
great.
a contributor, so
Yeah.
I had to have some form of that command to send the patches.
So you just wrote it yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you very much for that. That's my favourite Git command.
Thanks.
Yes. I'm sure everybody out there has one, and they're probably all different. So, how would you imagine that you're out there? You're an open source programmer or a programmer working on proprietary software, watching this interview. What would you say to people? How would you advise they get involved? Because we're always trying to find more people to work on things, because it's a great career, it's a lot of fun. How would you recommend that people start to do this, and what advice could you give to someone who's beginning?
It's probably the same thing as everybody else says. You start finding your own niche. It's not really, the goal is not being successful in open source. Goal is really satisfy your own need. So if you have, say, if you are a user of Samba, and if you see something missing
or broken,
usually broken, yeah, you just start digging and see if you can fix it, or maybe if you don't really have to be able to fix it yourself. You start by sending a bug report.
Yes.
And
that's a very good point, actually. Yeah, that's something, because we talk a lot about programming in these series, but just finding and reporting a bug and doing a very good job of creating a bug report, in many ways, that is the first step towards true wisdom, as it were.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And the other thing, of course, if you do manage to fix the bug, then you'll probably be using your Git commands to send it to the maintainers. So, so thank you very much, Jun.
Oh, thank you.
It's been really great to talk with you, and thank you so much for Git.
Thanks, everybody.